Welcome to Lecture 4 of PS201 Seven-Step Problem Solving. This lecture covers Step 3 of the framework, Prioritise the issues. In Lecture 3, we disaggregated Northmart's margin problem into a structured issue tree. That tree may contain 8, 10, or 12 branches. We cannot investigate all of them with equal rigor, time and resources are finite. Prioritization is the discipline of deciding which branches deserve our analytical attention and in what order. Here is the course roadmap. We have completed definition and disaggregation, the first two analytical steps. Today we move to prioritization, which is the third. In the lectures ahead, we will cover work planning, data collection and analysis, synthesis, and communication. Prioritization sits at a hinge point in the framework. It converts a complete issue tree into a manageable work agenda. Get it right, and the rest of the project runs efficiently. Get it wrong, and you will spend significant effort on branches that do not change the answer. The obvious question is, why not simply investigate every branch of the issue tree? The answer is that in real engagements, time is not unlimited, data access is uneven, and stakeholders expect a recommendation on a fixed timeline. Investigating everything equally is not thoroughness, it is an abdication of analytical judgment. Prioritization is not a shortcut. It is a professional skill, and the ability to make a well-reasoned prioritization decision under uncertainty is one of the things that distinguishes a skilled analyst from a junior one. The intellectual foundation of prioritization is the Pareto principle, the observation that in most systems, a small proportion of inputs drives a disproportionate share of outputs. In a business problem, not all branches of the issue tree carry equal analytical weight. Some branches, if confirmed, would change the recommendation fundamentally. Others would merely add nuance. The discipline of Pareto thinking begins with a recognition that impact is unequal, and that the distribution of impact across branches is itself something that can be estimated before the analysis begins. In practice, this means that roughly 20% of the branches on your issue tree will drive roughly 80% of the final recommendation. The remaining branches may be worth investigating eventually, but they should not compete for resources with the high-impact branches in the first phase of work. In Northmart's case, early data already suggests that cost growth is outpacing revenue growth. The cost branch is carrying the heavier analytical load. That is where the 20% lies, and that is where we should concentrate effort first. Selectivity is not laziness, it is a professional skill. The analyst who insists on investigating everything before forming a view is not being rigorous, they are avoiding the discomfort of making a judgment call under uncertainty. Experienced consultants and analysts make prioritization decisions quickly and explicitly, document their reasoning, and revisit those decisions when new data warrants it. Selectivity, done well, produces faster, sharper, and more defensible recommendations than exhaustive investigation. Pareto thinking is required whether you are working under tight time constraints or attempting deep analysis. Under time pressure, you must concentrate entirely on the highest impact branches or you will run out of time before reaching a conclusion. In a longer engagement, you must still prioritize, because depth on low-impact branches crowds out breadth on high-impact ones. There is no setting in which uninformed, equal-weight investigation of all branches produces the best outcome. The principle applies universally. There are 3 criteria against which every branch should be scored. The first is impact. If this branch confirms or denies a significant driver of the problem, how much does the final recommendation change? A high-impact branch is one where the finding, positive or negative, materially alters the direction of your recommendation. A low-impact branch is one where the finding adds color but does not change the answer. Score each branch on impact before considering the other 2 criteria. The second criterion is feasibility. Can this branch actually be investigated with the resources, time, and data access available? A branch that is analytically critical but requires 6 weeks of fieldwork when you have 3 weeks available may need to be deprioritized or addressed through a proxy. Feasibility is not an excuse to avoid hard work, it is a realistic constraint that must be incorporated into the plan. Ignoring feasibility at the prioritization stage creates commitments that cannot be met. The third criterion is data availability. Does the data needed to investigate this branch exist, and can we access it? In the Northmart case, financial data on revenue and cost is available at the store level. Customer transaction data is partially available. Supplier contract data requires negotiation to access. Branches that rely on inaccessible data must either be deprioritized, approached through estimation, or flagged as explicit gaps. Score every branch on all three criteria before ranking. The prioritization matrix plots each branch of the issue tree on two axes: impact, the vertical axis, and ease of analysis, which is a composite of feasibility and data availability, on the horizontal axis. The resulting grid creates four zones. High impact and easy to analyze, upper right, goes first. High impact and hard to analyze, upper left, requires creative resourcing. Low impact and easy, lower right, may be addressed quickly as supporting evidence. Low impact and hard, lower left, is deprioritized or cut. Plot each branch from your Northmart issue tree on the matrix. The fixed cost branch is high impact and the data is available in the management accounts. It sits in the upper right. The supplier negotiation branch is potentially high impact but requires weeks of commercial analysis. It sits in the upper left. The marketing spend efficiency branch is lower impact and moderately accessible, lower right. The international benchmarking branch is low impact and difficult to access, lower left. The matrix makes the ranking visible and discussable. The matrix does not make the prioritization decision for you, it structures the conversation. Once branches are plotted, you can have a clear, evidence-based discussion with your team and your client about where to focus. Upper right branches enter the first phase of the work plan. Upper left branches may be addressed in parallel with additional resources or scheduled for a second phase. Lower right branches may be addressed opportunistically. Lower left branches are either cut or flagged as out of scope. The prioritization decision must be documented and shared. Write the matrix outputs into a priority ranking, a numbered list of branches in order of analytical priority, and circulate it to the team and the client before the work plan is finalized. This serves two purposes. First, it ensures alignment. If the client disagrees with a prioritization, that disagreement surfaces before work begins rather than after. Second, it creates a record. When priorities are revisited later, the original rationale is preserved. A simple 1 to 3 scoring scale on each of the three criteria, impact, feasibility, and data availability, gives you a defensible rank order without the false precision of a complex formula. Score each branch: 3 for high, 2 for medium, 1 for low. Sum the scores. The branch with the highest total score is the highest priority. The beauty of this approach is not its mathematical rigor, it is its simplicity. A score of 9 out of 9 focuses attention immediately. A score of 3 out of 9 triggers a hard question: why are we investigating this branch at all? Cutting a branch means removing it from the active work plan, deciding explicitly that it will not be investigated in this phase of the project. This is not the same as declaring the branch irrelevant. It means that given the available time, resources, and data, this branch does not justify the investment required to investigate it adequately. Cutting is a decision, not a failure. Every mature analytical process involves cutting low-priority branches. The failure is cutting them implicitly, by running out of time, rather than explicitly, with a documented rationale. Apply 3 tests before cutting a branch. First, does cutting it create a material gap in your recommendation? If the branch contains a risk that could invalidate your main finding, it cannot be cut, it must be addressed, even if briefly. Second, can the branch be addressed through a proxy or an assumption rather than full investigation? If so, note the assumption explicitly and cut the branch from active investigation. Third, has the client or a key stakeholder flagged this branch as important regardless of your scoring? If so, it must remain in scope. When a branch is cut, document 3 things: the branch name, the reason for cutting it, and the assumption or proxy that replaces it. This documentation serves the integrity of the analysis. It tells any reader, now or in the future, that the cut was deliberate, not accidental. It also enables the team to revisit the cut if circumstances change. An undocumented cut is analytically invisible. It looks like the branch was never considered, which is both misleading and professionally weak. Cuts must be communicated to the client or stakeholder in advance, not disclosed in the final report. If you have decided not to investigate the marketing efficiency branch because data access is too limited, the client needs to know that before the work begins, not after the recommendation is delivered. Proactive communication of prioritization decisions builds trust. It demonstrates that the team is thinking clearly about resource allocation, and it gives the client the opportunity to provide additional data or to challenge the cut if they believe it is wrong. A common mistake is to lock the priority ranking at the start of the project and never revisit it. This approach, a static plan, treats prioritization as a one-time decision rather than an ongoing discipline. The risk is that new data arrives mid-project that materially changes the impact assessment for one or more branches, but the team continues to invest in the original priorities because the plan says so. Static prioritization is efficient in stable environments. Most real projects are not stable environments. Dynamic prioritization means checking your priority ranking at each significant milestone in the project, typically after the first wave of data collection, and again after any major finding. The check is simple: has anything changed that would alter the impact, feasibility, or data availability scores for any branch? If yes, update the ranking. If no, continue with the existing plan. The dynamic review does not need to be a lengthy meeting, it is a structured 15-minute conversation at each milestone checkpoint. When a revision to the priority ranking is warranted, follow a clear process. First, identify which branches are affected and by how much. Second, update the scoring matrix with the new information. Third, revise the work plan to reflect the new ranking. Fourth, communicate the revision to all stakeholders, including the client, with a clear explanation of what changed and why. A revision that is communicated proactively is a sign of analytical maturity. A revision that surprises the client in the final debrief is a sign of poor project management. In practice, prioritization for NorthMart begins with a clear ranking of the issue tree branches. Based on early data, the cost branch ranks first. It is high impact, the data is accessible, and initial trends confirm it is the primary driver of margin deterioration. Within the cost branch, labor and occupancy rank highest. Within the revenue branch, basket size and product mix rank above footfall because promotional data is available immediately. Write the ranked list before any analysis begins. Writing the priority list down forces precision. An unwritten prioritization is a set of individual assumptions that different team members will interpret differently. A written priority list, even a simple numbered list, creates a shared reference point. Team members who are uncertain about scope can consult the list. The client can review it before the work begins. The project manager can use it to assign work. Write it, share it, and make it the first document in the project file. Each branch in the priority ranking must have a named owner, one person who is responsible for delivering the analysis on that branch. Multiple owners create ambiguity about who is accountable when a deadline is missed or a finding is challenged. One owner per branch is the standard. That owner may draw on support from others, but accountability is singular. Assign owners at the same time as you finalize the priority ranking. Do not wait until the work plan is built. Set explicit checkpoints at which priorities will be reviewed. For a 12-week engagement like NorthMart, 3 review points are appropriate: at the end of week 2, after the first data collection wave, at the end of week 6, at the midpoint, and at the end of week 10, before the synthesis phase begins. At each checkpoint, run the dynamic review process. Document the outcome of each review, whether priorities changed or held, so that the prioritization history is preserved for the final report and any future reference. The first takeaway: not all branches are equal. Pareto thinking tells us that a small number of high-impact branches will drive the majority of the recommendation. Directing your analytical effort toward those branches, and cutting or deferring the rest, is not a shortcut. It is the professional discipline that allows you to produce a sharp, well-supported recommendation within a real-world timeline. The second takeaway, score every branch on impact, feasibility, and data availability before ranking. A simple 1 to 3 scale on each criterion produces a defensible rank order without false precision. The scoring process also reveals which branches require creative resourcing, those that are high impact but hard to investigate. Document the scores and share them with the client. Prioritization decisions that are visible and explicit are far more robust than those made intuitively and privately. The third takeaway, prioritization is a dynamic discipline, not a one-time decision. New data changes the calculus. Revisit your priority ranking at each major milestone and update it if the evidence warrants. Communicate every revision to your stakeholders before it affects the work plan. A team that manages its priorities dynamically and transparently produces better recommendations and builds more trust with its clients than one that locks a plan and defends it regardless of what the data shows. Here is the first discussion question. Take the Northmart issue tree you built in Lecture 3. Score each Levels 1 and Level 2 branch against the 3 prioritization criteria, impact, feasibility, and data availability using a 1 to 3 scale. What is your priority ranking? Which branches would you cut from the first phase of work? Be prepared to defend your scores. The second question. You are 3 weeks into the Northmart project and a new finding has emerged. One of Northmart's 6 stores has a cost structure that is 20% worse than the other 5. This was not visible in the aggregate data. Does this change your priority ranking? If so, which branches move up and which move down? Walk through the dynamic review process explicitly. The final question. Think about the difference between cutting a branch explicitly and running out of time to investigate it. What are the consequences of each, analytically, for the client and for your professional reputation? In your own work or experience, have you encountered situations where a branch was effectively cut by time pressure rather than by deliberate decision? What was the result?